This is Mind for Survival with your host, Brian Duff.
Go ahead, if you would, and introduce yourself. Let everybody know who you are, what you're about, whatever you feel comfortable saying.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I am Pat Watson, and I primarily teach a non-destructive entry course, meaning lockpicking, bypassing, covert entries, all sorts of things like that. As my primary business, I also run a franchise for Fortress Canine where I sell obedience-trained dogs, and Fortress Canine specializes in family protection dogs, which is shockingly different than sport biting or military and police patrol dogs. Very, very different. And I love it. I left the military and law enforcement jobs. I was full-time, active duty, deployed all over the world. And I just was so much, I had such a desire to train and to train myself and to train others at a very high level. And surprise, surprise, believe it or not, the military and the government is not the best placed for people that are forward thinkers who want to really cut that edge of the leading edge of training and innovation and, rewriting TTPs and things like that. So I left both of those careers to do this on my own. And now full circle, I provide this training to active operators and military, law enforcement, even international special forces units. And I teach people covert entry.
What is covert entry?
That's another, it's a subjective term. Depends on who you ask and what the context is. I have my own specialized curriculum that's for the real world use of these non-destructive entry skill sets. But covert entry is a kind of a leg of that. There's firefighter respectful entry or through the lock entry, what they call that. There's locksmithing, which we're not, but we're similar to. So kind of a wishy-washy answer, but that's because this is a really strange field. The marketing's terrible. Product information on different manufacturers' websites aren't really good. It's not a very regulated market, and I don't mean government regulation. I mean things are equaled and the same and equivalent and fair across the board, just as far as information goes. So it's a really unique field, and I've watched it grow over the last maybe 2 decades, and I'm happy to be a part of it. It's a really cool skill that is easy to add into your toolbox, and then once you have it, you can take it really, really far as with your capabilities, whatever you want to pour into that.
What is the curriculum like? So maybe that will help define it a little bit more.
Sure. So my curriculum is we get students into our classroom and we teach a 2-day foundations course, and I wouldn't call it beginner, although you can take it if you have no experience. But you get in the classroom and we go, hey, here's one technique, here's your lock, here's your tools, go. And students within 60 seconds of showing up to the course start opening their padlocks immediately. And we're very different than an academic course where we don't start with a PowerPoint. We don't use PowerPoint at all. We don't start with long instructor bios. We don't start with emergency planning. We just go, all right, we all here? Great. Start opening locks. So we do that. And then the very next thing that we do, number 2, is we go, okay, let's alter a variable, and you still have to get the lock open. Now what do you do? So the first thing our students learn is a crash course, and they immediately are opening locks. The second thing they learn is how to overcome different types of variables. And then we just start stacking that. So the curriculum is designed to be moved into the field when the students go, oh, I need to open this lock. Oh, I have this tool. Ooh, I don't have the other tool, but what if I did? Should I go back and get it? Or should I just start with the tools that I have in my pocket? And then, oh, what if this isn't working? How long do I spend on it before I switch to a different method? Or maybe there's 2 different locks on the obstacle and either one will get me access. How do I know which one to choose to work on first? So that starts within the first 10 minutes of class, which I love. So we produce thinking, operational students who can solve problems. And
that's really what it sounds like. You're throwing a lot of problem solving in there, and you're getting people to use their critical thinking skills and stuff and apply it to the situation.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
Oh man. So as a child, I knew that this stuff was out there. My old man was a police officer, and so I saw him with my own eyes. We'd be locked out of somewhere, and he'd shove a credit card in the door jamb, and we'd be in. And we'd see it. He was the type of police officer that was always on duty, even when he was off duty. So we'd be driving around town and just on our way to the shopping mall or something, and he'd see a stranded motorist like looking in their window, locked out of their car. So he'd pull over, talk to him, and he'd get the Slim Jim out of the trunk and pop someone's automobile door open for him and let him in. So I knew those things existed. I was primed for that. I started breaking out of handcuffs when I was 7 or 8 years old. Not a lot, but we touched on it here and there. And I did normal high school stuff, and then I got into the military before my 20s, and very quickly reconnected with that. I had a friend of mine that went to an Air Force SEER school, and this is post 9/11. So they had, for the first time, they had changed it just from jungle survival, and they had started teaching urban survival in the military SEER schools. And he said, "Oh yeah, I just got back from SEER school, and here's this padlock and these lockpicks. Here, look what they showed us." And I went, and I popped the lock open, and I went, "Oh yeah, that's right. I knew about this stuff when I was a kid. I did a little bit of it." And so, maybe 20 years old, I dove headfirst back into that world, and I was practicing 7 days a week, multiple hours a day, just adjusting variables, trying new tools, looking through research, reading books, watching people's videos. And for 2 decades, I was learning, studying, writing my own case studies out of, hey, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, I tried that next. Maybe I should add this tool or remove this tool from my gear loadout, and just a wealth of data that turned into the curriculum that I now teach others. I had a little bit of professional training. I was not impressed with it. This is a skill set that is mostly taught academically, where your instructors say, here's your tool, here's your technique, it works on this lock. Okay, you're prepared. Go out, do great things. And in my opinion, you're not prepared if you don't know. If you know how a tool works, that's great. But the other half of that is, when will your tool not work? What are its failure points? What have you maybe been misled or lied to about? And if you're in the field and it doesn't work, how do you overcome that to make it work or make something else work? So our goal is always the final entry. And even on a successful entry for me in the field, a normal entry for me is, if I have to get someone, say, into a residential house, I will see some sort of target that I want to attack first, and I'll try that with non-destructive entry. And I'll go, ooh, this, either it works and we're in, or if it doesn't work, what else do I do? If that doesn't work, how else do I adjust? If that doesn't work, how else do I adjust? So failure, 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 failure. And then something else gets me in, and I go, yes, and now the success. So it's kind of like, you can look at it kind of like a fist fight. Like if you're in a fist fight and you get punched, you don't go, oh, I lost. That's a failure. Okay, I quit. You go, ooh, that didn't work. Oh, I got hit. Ooh, that didn't work. I got hit again. Well, I have to try something different. And it's this constant cat and mouse game of a little bit of a battle. And a lot of, especially the academic schools that teach this stuff, they don't talk about that existing. So I think that's where we shine, is the real application.
That makes sense. So I know you're into preparedness on some levels. What got you into the whole preparedness gig, thought process,
Sure.
Lifestyle, however you want to phrase that?
Yeah, that was ingrained since I was a kid. My dad was, always had his gun off duty, and we knew that bad people did bad things out there, and sometimes good people did things that were not great. But I knew, even just as a kid, there really wasn't an off duty for survival. So if you want to be prepared and you want to survive, especially against things like violence, or even just emergencies, you have to put a little bit of effort into the beforehand to make the event, less of an emergency. So it started way back when I was a kid. And then just living a life of, I spent a decade in the military and then a couple of years as a street patrol officer in law enforcement. And yeah, it just every single day swimming into that environment of you can't not be prepared in that world. If you are, and especially if you're likely to face violence or emergencies, you're not going to last very long. So that was very much ingrained. Nice.
What concerns you most right now with what's happening in the world? These are kind of like 2 standard questions I always ask people. What's your, if there's your, and I know, it's like there's so much going on, and I've talked about it on other episodes where, 5 years ago or so, whatever it was, people worried about like, when's the asteroid? When's the super volcano going to hit? When's this major disaster going to strike and we're all going to be wiped out? And now I did a survey a couple months ago, and there's like natural disasters were really low on the list of what people are worried about, right? So it's interesting watching that shift in the preparedness community for what people's big bugaboos are. What do you think what concerns you most with what's going on in the world right now?
That is an easy one to answer. There is only one answer at the top of my head for that one, and that's that I feel like the way the modern American life, and other places around the globe too, the way that life is going, food quality is going down, food portion sizes are going down, prices are going up. Just the cost of goods is going up, the quality is going down across the board. It's harder to find employment. Wages are going down, cost of living is going up, availability to things like loans and credit going down, cost of everything going up. So I feel like we're just in a very big, very long-term squeeze, especially for the lower and middle classes. And I feel like I can't dump money into pallets of MREs if I also can't pay my bills every month. So I think one of the biggest things people, and this is just my personal experience, I think one of the biggest things you can do is to take control of your income and take control of, I really feel like a lot of employers will take more of your liberty than any government or any foreign government, domestic or foreign government will. They tell you where to go, when to be there. And if you want to be somewhere else, you have to ask permission, and they can deny that. They often limit how much money you can make. And so for me, one of my big answers to being better prepared and just living a better life was to get out of the employment game and just to run my own company, which gives me so much of my freedom back. And it's an awful lot of work, but being an employee is often an awful lot of work too. So I feel like that's those scales are even. So the biggest concern for me was, even if you are an employee, if we all lived from 2019 until today, we've seen that just because you have a long work history at a company doesn't mean you're going to stay there tomorrow. In 2019, 2020, I watched almost half of the huge company that I work for get laid off just with a snap of a finger. So I will never fire myself, that's for sure. And I like the ability to choose where I go and what I do and what projects I work on, with which people I do, which people I don't work with is important too. So just trying to do better every day. And I like it. I really like what I do. And besides taxes and the administrative side of the business, everything I do is something I want to do, I choose to do, and I have a say in how it goes. Yeah. So I just I think this is the best possible spot that I could be in today. As far as the past versions of me, we're trying to work towards this moment.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, it's one of the things I look at when it comes to the preparedness side of the house, right? When I was working on the early drafts of my book that's coming out, it was, I had two goals of preparedness, right? To survive and to minimize unwanted struggle. Like, that's the goal. But then I started really chewing on it as I was going through it. And I was like, those are two goals. Those are good goals, but what does that lead to, right? Like, why are you doing that? I mean, if you're surviving and just to have a miserable life, I'm not saying to, go give up on life, but your goal is always to make life better, right? To have a more fulfilling life, I think, and to have those moments where we say, hey, I'm really glad, like, today was a really good day, and you feel good about it. And, you mentioned the corporate America thing. I know when we talked yesterday, we talked a little bit about this, when I was doing the diplomatic security program, I started at the bottom and I just kept going, I need to work my way up this thing because there's improvements that can happen. This makes sense. And I got to the top of the program. I had thousands of people underneath me. I was working in DC, and one of my first days into the office, not my first days, probably within about 6 months of coming there, a new CEO came on board, a new company president, and they wanted to sell the company. And so in order for them to look better and to be able to make money, they fired like 80 people one day. A bunch of my staff got laid off. And it was like, and they just didn't care. And I remember going, wow, that was just you hear about it, but then when you see it and you're exposed to it, it's wild. So I like what you do. I'm doing it now. I would, with my resume, doing what I used to, if I want to go back into doing what I used to do, I was making $200,000+ a year. So I could have a nice life, very easily. But what did I do? I was in the office 60 hours, 70 hours a week. I would go in on Sundays and work 6 or 8 hours on a Sunday, just because that's when I could have quiet time without having to help support my staff, and I could get stuff done. And it wasn't a life, so I was grinding. I had great money, but like, what was I doing with it? I did nothing. Like it was terrible. So no, I'm fully on board with, I think that's such a key aspect of preparedness. And it's kind of different than what a lot of people do in preparedness. A lot of people prepare, like you mentioned, the MREs. A lot of people, when we prepare to suck. I'm just gonna, and MREs are great. They have their role, right? There's an application for those. People go and they buy MREs thinking that's, that's planning to suck, right? Like you mentioned food earlier, planning to eat well and to eat as healthy as possible. And a good buddy of mine, Josh Burmeister, has been on the show. I think he was on the show last month. He has a really good way of looking at it that you really don't hear in the preparedness world. It's trying to maintain a normal life as much as possible, rather than, if you eat fresh food now, rather than going and saying, I'm just going to switch to canned food and MREs. It's maintaining that normal life, being as healthy as possible, living your best possible life, I think, is what the goal of all this should be.
Yeah, I'm looking out my window. I can see my greenhouse there. I got, better than MREs growing out of the ground right now. So yeah. I think it's part of the journey. And I think it's important to go, oh no, it'd be nice to have stored food. Yes, sure. I don't disagree with that.
No.
And then I think later on in the journey that becomes, what if we can move the bar back a little bit so that maybe we're not buying MREs, we're producing food, I think is a great way to look at it. Just again, moving a little bit more towards that knife's edge of capability.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned yesterday, Jack Spirko's lifestyle design. Can you go over that again?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. Life-changing for me. The shortest version I can do, normal design is you get your career and your employer tells you where to go, when to go, and wherever that employment requires you to be, you can live within a radius of that. And whatever days you're working, those hours that you're at work, well, whatever's left, you get to spend doing what you want. And then whatever days you're not working, you get to do what you want on those days. Whatever income they offer you, you can usually make that income, but not usually much more than that. And if you want to do something different, you have to ask permission, and you're likely to get denied. So lifestyle design is, instead of having the job and then designing whatever's left for your life, with self-employment, you can say, ooh, maybe I love traveling. So for my business, I'll say, I can provide product and or service to you, and I'll travel to you because I love traveling. So you base your business around your little traveling RV, and you make yourself mobile, and you do that if you like it. But if you hate traveling and you love hanging out with your dog at your workshop with your music and just fiddling with stuff, then you can get a brick and mortar business, and you can say, we don't leave this store 5, 6, 7 days a week. We're here. We'll be here. We don't travel. And you can make business decisions that, well, if there's business that needs to happen over there, I'm not taking that business. I'll either adjust and get that business here, or I'll take someone else's business that can come here. So you get to design your lifestyle the way you want, because your business is the vehicle and you're in charge of that vehicle. So that's what I've been doing for the last maybe 5, 6 years now. And it's been incredibly rewarding. So everybody out there has a bad boss. Everybody out there has coworkers they don't like. So I also now can fire people. I can fire customers. I can fire collaborators. I can fire business partners, and I can go, this isn't working. Best of luck. I'm going to do business another way somewhere else. But I can also pick up and I can maintain relationships where those are appropriate. And I can say, I love working with this person. I choose to work with this person. And my life is so much more enriched because every time I pick up the phone or every time I get a text message from someone I either work with or I'm friends with, it's a person that I choose to keep in my circles. And almost every single employee and supervisor out there, you're dealing every single day of the week with some people that you just don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, even that, incredibly life-changing. And just, I think just the alleviation of that stress of wearing what I want, going where I want, when I want, at whatever pace I want. Yes, my income will reflect it. If I'm lazy for a week or two and I'm not making a lot of sales, it will reflect, my income statement will show that. But the stress of, man, I'm really going to hammer these things out for the next week, 2 weeks, whatever. And then going, man, I am not going to do a single thing at all for work today. I feel like that's so much more of a human experience. Like what you said, living a normal life. I think whatever, way back whenever humans were plopped down on the earth, I think it was, if you want to gather more berries and kill more animals, you go do that. If you're caught up and you want to take a day off, you do that. But I think it's the asking for permission part for me that has been life-changing.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's, I think that goes into managing your expectations and taking some initiative. It's one of the things that I believe in. I tell people all the time is we get it wrong, right? I feel we get it wrong in the US, and maybe this is other parts of the world, but we say work-life balance. Well, that's some mental propaganda we're being fed. It should be life-work balance. Prioritize your life, not your work. Now, if your work is something you enjoy going in, and grinding at some company, okay, that's cool. That's your decision. You're establishing your priorities and you're managing your expectations. It's like, I don't make anywhere near the money I used to make, but I'm happy, right? Like and that's a huge thing every day. I don't wake up and even when it comes to, even the preparedness side, I think back when I was grinding and doing the corporate America thing, I think that, I was more doom and gloomy. I was more, the world sucks kind of stuff, right? Because it was just, I was sucking. I was mentally in this habit trail, this wheel running around like a rat that it would impact the rest of my life. Now, I work on this every day. Like there's maybe once every 2 weeks, I'll take a day off. But there's days where I put 4 or 5 hours in and I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm going outside, going for a hike, whatever, And so,
yeah,
again, I understand that, hey, people have considerations. They want insurance. They have different things that they have to do. And so they take those jobs. But I think Spirko and you are right, that you got to look at your lifestyle and figure out, what do I want? What can I get away with? Because loyalty is not there in corporate America. Right? Mm-hmm. So, and this is a huge, sometimes it's like, well, this isn't really traditional preparedness, but I think it really is preparedness, right? You're going back to all that stuff you do to live a good life.
Yeah, it's the taking control, because I think a lot of people that do the pallets of MREs, and whatever that metaphor is, I think that's you choosing to prepare for in case something happens. I feel like that's a decision that you're acknowledging that you're not in control, if that's your preparedness method. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was, again, moving a little bit more towards the knife's edge, which was, well, why don't I take control? And I'm not going to lay myself off. I am not going to fire myself. So that little chunk of that pallet of MREs, I don't need to worry about, because if a company fires you, you're in emergency mode right away and you have nothing. You have no income. Most people are only a one employment person, or most people only work for one employer. For me, even if some bureaucrat in the government clicks a button and my whole industry is shut down tomorrow, I'm still not fired. I can pivot and I can do something different with my business, and I'm still making an income, and I'm still in control of my ship, so to speak. I'm not kicked off of someone else's ship swimming in the water, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that preparedness could be taking control of more systems instead of preparing for what to do after someone kicks you out of their system. And I think that that's a big level up in preparedness, is moving a little bit to one direction on that timeline.
You're making yourself more resilient.
Oh yeah, incredibly.
And that's what it's about, being able to weather the storm. And not every storm is, the impending whatever craziness we may have coming down the road or whatever. That's the potential for a societal meltdown. That's your, I'm sure you're in the military. That's your 300-meter target, right? That's your far target. May happen, doesn't pop up all the time. But that 50-meter target, the one that's right there that, is in front of you, that's the biggest threat. That's that job loss. That's the, things have gone sideways. I got sick, someone, something happened. My car engine blew up, or, my home was robbed, whatever that is. And that, I think that's where you're getting at with being that more resilient lifestyle design.
Yeah, it's incredibly enriching.
Yeah. You also had some really good views on individual liberty, man. You want to go into that?
Yeah. So what do I got here? I have a book that I took out of print. I'll put it back into print. I'll publish it again. I'm probably going to write a second and a third book in that series, but the book it's the swear word, the F 4-letter word, bureaucracy. So I don't know what kind of ratings you give the show, but that's F blank 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 bureaucracy. And it's a really short little book. It's only 69 pages. And the first half of the book is just laying out what I believe every single organization that could be called a bureaucracy. Okay, what is the thing that makes them that?
Right.
And what incentive system must that show? Not optional, not subjective. If it is a bureaucracy, then it does this, does that, does the other thing. And if I can get people just to agree with my definition and to agree with the incentives that exist in a bureaucracy, then what can you do with that information? How
do you define it?
So it is an organization where the people at the top are rewarded at the expense of the people on the bottom. And it's a place where you are incentivized to do the wrong thing and disincentivized to do the right thing. And it's also it's a group with a rigid hierarchy where your qualifications and your capability have nothing to do with your pay rate or your rate of respect or your even what you do on a job site. Right. So very rigid hierarchical, based upon rank, not based upon capability. There's a couple more things to it. Usually a large enough organization where those incentives start to pop up. But the real rub is I just picked maybe, I think, 9 or 10 different incentives that exist in that system or patterns. Some things like the closer you are to management, the more perks you receive in line with management. But the farther you are away from management, the less reprimands you receive because you're kind of out of sight, out of mind. But you can get away with more things because you're out of sight, out of mind. So your proximity to management has an effect on the things that you do and don't get attention from them for. I think that's pretty clear. The CEO secretary probably gets a lot more free donuts than the people that are at the far end of the base in a rickety shack that never have to swipe an ID or hit a time clock because they're just way out there. The CEO probably doesn't go out there every day and go, hey, these are my leftover donuts. Have fun, guys.
Right.
Because you're real far away. And I think we all know that exists in a bureaucracy. If you're farther away from the boss, you can get away with more, but you also don't get as much positive attention either. What are some other things? God, there's 10. I'll go grab the books. I think you'll like the cover. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
That's our book.
Nice.
And I'll flip through here. Let's see. Did I even do a table of contents? I produced this in 2021, so 3 years ago. The rules for thee, not for me. Everyone knows that there are different rules for people, or you can be held accountable differently based upon your rank. We have every single rank within a bureaucracy is incentivized to lie to every other rank. So if you're middle management, you're incentivized to lie to your bosses and you're incentivized to lie to your superiors. If you're upper super management, you're incentivized to lie to every single rank below you. People at the very bottom are incentivized to lie all the way up. And so if that's the way that this organization works, is that really a place that you want to spend your whole life? You want to spend more time there than at home with your family?
It becomes a game.
Yeah, it is a game very much. We have a control of the evidence is more important than being factually correct. So
right.
Who gets to issue the orders and then who carries out the orders? And then if you carry out the orders and something bad happens, even if you're right and you have facts, the people that take those facts and weigh those facts and make a decision on it have a lot more power than the people with the actual truth of evidence of what happens. God, it just happened the other day. God, there's so many stories here.
Yeah, they're all they're all true right now. Like everything you said so far, it reminds me really my time either working directly for the State Department or working as a contractor that the company I was working for is providing services to it. It's all theater.
Last two I'll throw at you, and then I'll kind of come full circle back to that question was we have policy is not written by the operators. I think we all know that one is incredibly wild to me, that you have people making up the rules for getting the job done and not talking to the people that get the job done.
When I was doing when I was working at State Department, so I oversaw the contract, right? And so I had to make sure that that the way operations were happening were in alignment with the contracts. A lot of times in the government will go and someone at the government will tell, a contractor. So like in our case, someone that was providing security over in Iraq, oh, we want you to do this, but not realizing that, that might end up adding $10 million to the price of the contract. Like, so there's you can get it done, but there's a process. The thing that was really infuriating was the contracting officer was the most powerful person on the program, even more so than the senior regional security officer, Department of State agent that was ultimately in charge of all the security for the embassy in Baghdad, because the contracting officer controlled the contract. And so there were times literally where we needed to have something done. And it's like, just get in there, get with the contractor, have a discussion, figure it out, write a contracting mod and get it in place. And you couldn't get it done. And it was wild I had a canine program under me, since we talked a little bit about canine, and I had 120, 130 bomb dogs on the program that guarded all the entry control points into the embassy and stuff. And so I looked at it and having an overseas contractor, canine handler and dog, there's a huge cost to that. The canine handler is getting 175, 200 grand a year, plus the expense of the dog and everything on top of it. And I'm like, hey, we could get rid of 4 positions and not blink, save the taxpayers some money. Well, I thought I was saving the taxpayers some money since it's all made up. But anyway, and when I went to the system and I went to the contracting officer and everybody, I said, hey, we could eliminate these 4 positions and be okay. They wouldn't eliminate the positions. And it was, I was like, why aren't you getting rid of these positions? It's not, we had a shortage. We didn't even have people to staff those positions. And they were convinced that somebody down the road would need a job somewhere. Like some dog handler was going to be moping around the States and like, we need to give somebody a job. What will people do for that job? And I was like, it's more efficient this way. It's more effective for the taxpayers. They didn't care. It was wild.
No matter.
Yeah.
And the last one I'll throw at you, which probably the one that bothers me the most, is requirements of responsibilities are added without adding infrastructure or adjusting existing infrastructure. And I saw this probably the most as a street patrol officer, which was, hey, now you have to carry this device in your trunk. Okay, now you have to carry that device in your trunk. Okay, this other big bulky thing, every officer has to have this in their trunk. And I started going, well, what am I able to take out of my trunk now? Because you keep adding shit.
Yeah.
So I have a whole bin full of paperwork. I have my gym clothes. I got my lunchbox. I got my tools. I got a box of road flares. I got a portable AED. I got drug stuff. Okay, what's coming out? And the way that the system works is it always corrects itself. It has to. The scale's always even. Meaning, what the taxpayer / and or the bureaucracy and or the sheriff or whoever it is, they go, oh, well, I know how to solve this. We'll do pop quiz inspections, and we'll just pick a day, and the officers will come in and they'll get with the sergeant before shift starts. That way we know it's right, and we will go down the checklist sheet and we will make sure that everything's in your trunk for your shift. It'll be a surprise inspection. That way we'll make sure you're squared away. Well, what happens is either A, enough people fail the inspection that the scales start to tip and they go, oh, well, we're going to have to do something different because this isn't working. And you can't fire everybody. You can't send everybody home at the beginning of the shift for not having their stuff. So what adjusts again is the sergeants go, okay, well, I have this big boxy thing. Just take it out of my car, put it in your trunk. Okay, it's in there. Check. So the sergeants will start lying on the inspections because the sergeants also have an incentive to lie up the chain of command. And or the sergeants will start going, okay, I can't lie on all these inspection sheets. So guys, tomorrow there's going to be a pop quiz. So guys would go home in their patrol cars, and the night before shift, they would take all this shit from their personal closet at home, throw it in the back seat of their cruiser, drive into work the next morning, and then the sergeant would do the inspection. They'd go, well, where's your box of this? And you go, oh, that one's in the back seat. Boxes in there. They dig through them. Go, oh, here it is. It's right here. They go, okay, inspection's over. Everybody would take all their shit from the back seat, and they'd throw it in the squad room or put it in their locker or drive home and dump it at home and then go do their shift the way that they know how to do their shift. So the scales always tip. And when you start adding responsibilities without adding infrastructure or taking away other requirements, you have to start cutting corners. It has to happen. Mm-hmm. There is no other option. And sometimes it's up here. Like, hey, we need you to remember this new thing. Oh, and remember that new thing. And sometimes there's no brain space, but sometimes it's like with the trunk of your car, it's physical space. These are the laws of physics. We can't break them as far as we know. If you need me to put 3 trunks worth of stuff into one trunk, I'm going to have to cut corners. So if you exist in that world, for me, that drove me crazy. I could not, as a human, wrap my brain around, this doesn't work. You know it doesn't work. We've proven it doesn't work. Can we do something different? Nope, still have to do it that way. I was so miserable existing in a world where I knew that we could stop more drugs if we made this one alteration we had the data to prove that this works. Nope, can't do it. I knew that we would be better officers if we adjusted this one. Everyone knows it, and the sergeants know it, and the lieutenants know it. And you say, hey, can you send this up the chain? We all know this works. And the response is, yeah, I know, and you're right, but we can't ask for that. Or if we ask, it won't get approved. It's like, well, that's not a world I want to live in anymore.
Yeah.
So it was a long curve, but it blew my mind. So for me, for my sanity, I left. And I think that, again, running my own business was the best thing I could have done for my personal liberty. And I still teach tactics. I'm still involved with the tactical communities. I like what I do. And I am uncensored. Tactical is the name of my business, but I'm also, it's that kind of name was because I'm not censored from teaching effective tools, techniques, and skills to people because of bureaucracy. So if I teach one course and I go, great, here's your certification, you guys are all certified. And the next day, something changes either in my head or with technology or with budget, I can go, okay, next class, we're not teaching that anymore. And I don't have to answer to anybody. I just go, I'm going to give you the most cutting edge information to make you the best possible entry operator out there. And no one is stopping me from doing that. That was the ticker. And that's why I left 2 full-time government careers to teach government skills, which is, wild to me. But it's because of this. It's because this is a world where it's not supposed to make sense in any way. It can't possibly make sense. You can have a little better or a little worse, but
no,
it's a world I couldn't live in.
The system becomes more important than the product and than the output of the system. At State Department, I worked in their special operations branch for a year. It's called MSD, Office of Mobile Security Deployments. Mm-hmm. And the agents had a lot of the diplomatic security agents have been pushing to be able to carry a backup weapon, right? They wanted to be able to carry an ankle holster with them. My understanding, and it was approved while I was there. And my understanding was it had taken 5 years to get the ankle holster through the approval process. I was like, how does that happen? It's like, it's an ankle holster. Come up with a few ankle holsters and go with it. And then I was tasked with being on a committee. They wanted to put a little bit of a med kit on the agents' belts, on their little Batman belt that they wore under their suit coat. And so I went to the first meeting, and there was probably 5 or 6 of us. And it was, hey, what should we put in here? And I was like, well, you should probably have a tourniquet, and then maybe a chest seal. Something like that. Just thinking of, what's most life-threatening things that they're going to be involved with if they ever get shot or in some sort of, altercation. That, and that shouldn't have been, that should have pretty much been, here's what the medical recommendations are. Okay, well, here's what the agents think because they're the ones that have to carry it. But then all these bureaucrats got involved, people that weren't even an agent or part of any tactical medicine side of the house. I left there after the first meeting 11 months later. The committee of 4 or 5, 6 people that we started with just to figure this thing out had grown to 20 something. Mm-hmm. And 11 months later, they still couldn't decide on what they wanted because everybody turned into a good idea fairy. And, to them, going to the meeting was great because they'd go to the meeting, they'd get a donut or a bagel, and then they'd go to lunch afterwards. And because they're driving across DC, they don't have to go back to their office afterwards. And so it became more of a finger drill. Like the meeting became more important than actually getting this kit out to the agents, right? And so, I don't know. Maybe they finally resolved it years later, but when I left there, I was like, oh, it's going to take 5 years, just like the ankle holster. So you had DS agents, diplomatic security agents, walking around without a backup weapon because someone somewhere was having a committee to spend 5 years deciding on what that holster was, or however many years it was. And it's the same thing. You had agents walking around probably without tourniquets or without chest seals, possibly getting into some sort of shootout, and they don't have the ability just because it was more about the system than it was about getting a good product out and getting people and helping people.
Let me throw a wrench in your brain here for a second. What if we give you another definition for bureaucracy, which is where the stated mission, accomplishing the mission, is less important than the existence of the bureaucracy?
That's 100% true.
Let me go one level deeper, which is there is a stated mission for every bureaucracy. We exist to do this thing. Have you ever wondered, what if there's a mission that's not stated that also exists, that's much more true, and which matches all the incentives that we lay out?
Yeah.
So if these are the incentives, and there is a system in which someone can benefit from these incentives, and if there is maybe another mission statement that's not public knowledge, then what?
Yeah, no, I think that's accurate. The bureaucracy becomes about enriching the people within the bureaucracy in a lot of ways, the senior leadership, and not especially. I don't consider. I mean, there are some, but like your big corporations, there are bureaucracy, but when it comes to the federal government and the government in general, it was wild where when I was working on the private side, running the security program, we had attorneys, corporate attorneys. Our corporate attorneys were stolen away from federal government. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that were doing really good jobs at the federal government. You go in and you come up against them. And it's like, hey, you want this corporate job? The private companies would steal the good employees away for the good attorneys from the federal government. And so the federal government attorneys, by and large, stunk because all the good ones would leave. And the same happened with the IT department, the computer department, people that handled the internet and all that. The good ones are out in the corporate side. And so the bar, when you have that, the bar that's set within those agencies for what is considered an effective work product, is terrible. Like you couldn't get anything done. It was horrible. I mean, there was occasionally someone that was good, and then once you get to that point, I think where it's the bar for the expected outcome isn't great. Then the bar for how people do, work during the day, there's no expectation there. It's just in DC, like Fridays, good luck getting anybody to do it. They call it Federal Friday. Everybody's out of the office that's in the federal government by 10 o'clock. If they come in at all by 10, 11, 12, they're out sitting in a bar doing happy hour, and it's on the government dime. They're still getting paid on the clock, basically.
I did international counter-narcotics, and we would often, we worked close hand in hand with federal legal and with lots of people in DC for intel and things like that. And we would start a boarding. We used to be terrified to start boardings on like a Thursday or a Friday, especially if we started a boarding Friday around noon, because there were certain steps that we had to get permission for and certain ones we didn't. And if we started a boarding on Friday and we needed permission to do the next step, if we boarded a boat and went, yeah, there's probably not drugs here, we're done. But if we thought there were drugs there, and we had to go, well, crap, okay, now we need to move forward. We'd have our watchstander on the Intel computer try to talk to someone in DC. We'd go, hey, we need permission for this next step. And they'd say, sure, stand by. Okay, yeah, we'll get back to you Monday morning. Just hold what you got. And we would keep people prisoners on their own boats in the middle of the ocean. We'd stay on their boat with them because chain of custody for evidence. We couldn't leave the boat. So I'd be head to toe in SWAT gear, 85 pounds of gear in the middle of the ocean on a little crappy fishing boat with my team, just sitting there for 48 hours waiting for Monday to roll around so that we could maybe get permission to take the next step in the process. So I'm familiar with Federal Friday and the red letter days of, well, if it's a Monday, then we also take Friday off, no big deal. And so there were times we started a boarding on a Thursday, and then Thursday night, we'd say, hey, can we get maybe word Friday morning? And every once in a while, a watchstander would reply and chat, and they'd go, "Oh, funny story. Because Monday's a holiday, we also get Friday off." I'm like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense. You should be working harder on Friday." Like, this is wild.
No, it's wild. So, it's it's frustrating, right? It's frustrating as a citizen. It was frustrating to work in it when you're trying to hey, this isn't hard. Speaking of hard, and speaking of something that's hopefully helps people not be frustrated, talk to me about, you have a class you just created recently. It's the Homestead Lockpicking course. What is that? So, dive into that, and how does that benefit people?
I love and hate that this skill set is so either misunderstood or not even known of. Mm-hmm. And people just see people picking locks, and it's relegated usually to two roles: locksmiths and super spies on TV. That's it. And I love that it's so unique and it's so specialized, because that kind of gives it a little power boost. Like, oh, this is really valuable. But it also sucks trying to sell a really good idea to people that don't know what that idea is. It just doesn't compute. So our first video course was shot super high definition with basically a TV film crew. It's called Tactical Lockpicking 101. We host it on the Teachable platform, and it's like attending one of my 2-day courses, just one-on-one with me teaching to the camera. And we've gotten just a ton of great feedback for that. And that's a good option for people that can't make it out to our in-person course. We launched another course, and we shot this one in-house. So we separated it from that first course, just because all of the video quality, the audio quality, the editing was done in-house. It's still very good, and I don't think there's anything else on the market that competes with it. But just like you could decide to learn a few things about your car, but you don't have to be a mechanic or take a mechanics class, you can do a lot of things for your own keyed and lock system, and you don't have to be a locksmith. A lot of the knowledge is publicly accessible. A lot of the tools are publicly accessible. They're not restricted. You don't have to put in a super secret ID in order to purchase items online. So we put together a nice boiled down list of, if you want to take control of your locked access systems on your property, maybe in your business property, on your homestead, or if you maybe operationally, whatever your professional job is, we said, okay, what do people need to know? Well, they need to know about troubleshooting. So if you get a key stuck in a lock, how do you solve that? If you forget a code to a combo lock, how do you solve that? If you want to rekey something, so take the old key that works, adjust the lock so that only the new key works. How can you do that? So we boiled this stuff down into a couple of video lessons, and we call it the Homestead Locksmith. So it's not a course that will certify you in locksmithing, but it's a way that you can, if it fits your application method, like if you live in an apartment and only have one locked door and it's your perimeter outside door, you might not get a lot out of this course. But if you run a homestead and you have a couple little sheds and you have your front gate, maybe if you have volunteers and some sort of business on site, that's a big deal, because every single time you call a locksmith to your property, with rare exception, you're looking at least $100 to $200 just for them to show up. And especially if it's an emergency and if they have to use a power tool to break something and to reinstall something, 200, 300, 400, it adds up really quick. So we're pricing it super low. I think it's going to be under $100 for the course. It's going to launch this weekend, but all the video footage is up. And we'll probably put some more lessons up there as time goes by and we see either new technology or updates. So it's an ever-evolving course. But I think especially for the homesteader or the prepper, you can use it to leverage a little better security in your life with some concepts to consider. There's one block that we filmed called "What Does Your Fence or Your Gate Say About Your Homestead?" So this is a drill you can do for free. Just as you're driving through your own town or driving across the country or whatever, just look around and go, oh, there's a fence. Ooh, what is that telling me? And there's some fences that you can see through and some that you can't. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, if it's a used car lot, they want you to see the cars, but they also don't want people climbing over the fence when the business is closed. Okay, so the fence is kind of high. There's some barbed wire maybe. Okay, so they don't want people climbing the fence. Got it. People in your neighborhood might have really expensive, really pretty fences, but they want you to see their beautiful house behind it. So they just did a couple steel bars. They painted them black. You could crawl right through them. Okay, so that's probably not to keep people out, but you're definitely not driving your vehicle through it. So, okay, that fence says that about that property. And then you can shift and go, ooh, what does our fence or lack of a fence say about our property? So if you want that edge on security, you can play with that and go, well, I don't want people coming here and abducting my children. Okay, but I do want my neighbors to be able to see my house. Okay, so what options do I have? Maybe we don't have kids. Maybe it's just me and my wife or just me. And maybe I just don't like people. Okay, so maybe I want a tall fence that you can't see through, but I also just don't want people to know I'm here. So maybe I cover it with ivy and they can't even see the fence. They just see brush. Ooh, okay. Yeah, that fits me. So then you're just starting to think about the way that your security systems interact with each other. Yeah. Then things like, should I choose a padlock that has a code on it or a padlock that has a key? We did a block on that. What's the difference? Well, if you have the key, then whoever has the key can get in. But if you lose the key, you can't get in at all. Well, okay, a combo lock, I can always get in. I don't need to carry a key. That's great. Yeah, but anybody off the street can walk up and just try buttons, and they'll eventually get it if they wait long enough. Oh, crap. Okay, well, you can share your key with someone, but that takes a lot of effort. And so most locks only come with one or two keys. So what if you need a third one? Okay, well, if I'm sharing access, a combo lock probably works better because then I can tell someone the combo. I don't need to hand them the key. That's easy. So a lot of people, I file this under the category of things you know that you didn't know that you know. And I love those lessons anytime I can identify that. And then we did, of course, how to take a lock apart, how to repin it, rekey it, and how to put that back into your working system. And that's really, even if it's just, I mean, a lot of homesteaders, or maybe you're a rancher or homesteader or a business owner, and maybe you have like 10 or 20 keys on your key ring, and maybe you hate that. Okay, well, rekey some of your locks together so that one key opens up a bunch of locks. Boom, problem solved. So little things like that of just knowing that you can control your locked access systems, I think is a really big win, especially in the preparedness and in the self-sufficiency world, where there's an easy onboarding level. You can start doing this stuff today. You don't need a PhD. You can go online, you can order the tools, and when they get there, you can open it and you can start making progress. Very low barrier to entry and low cost to get involved on the low end. And if you struggle, there's lots of free resources online. The lock entry community, as far as I've seen, has been very, very, very helpful and very outright with their information, publicly accessible. Most of it's free. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a niche that not a lot of people know about. And I think that gives it a lot of power too. And even if it's not money, even if it's not time, even if it's not security updates, just being the person that understands how to gain entry through lock systems without the key or the code can be a huge benefit to the people in your community. And I like it because you can spend your whole life going to rifle course after rifle course after rifle course. You could drive a rifle just like a monster. Great. Mm-hmm. And you may never, ever, ever pull the trigger and shoot somebody. It doesn't mean your rifle training was wasted, but just mathematically, doing the thing has given you zero return on that investment. But when you take a lock entry course and you realize how easy it is to access lock security, mm-hmm. and you leverage that for your friends or family or your community, that's a big deal. That's like, oh my God, you saved the day. And that doesn't require the end of the world, and it doesn't require a gunfight, and it doesn't even require like a tornado to happen for you to save the day. That's just regular life stuff that will make you just a more valuable human as far as the things that you can give to others for services.
I like that. I think it sounds like it really helps people focus on their home security, or maybe not even just focus on their home security, better understand their home security. The 5 Ds of home security starts with, you have to outline your perimeter. Where's my perimeter? And then you look at everything from there in, and how do you make, with deter, detect, delay, deny, and defend kind of stuff, right? So, how do you look at that? And I don't think people really, I think people play a lot of lip service to that, just kind of like, I know my perimeter and this is what it is. And then it gets back to the rifle. I'll defend, right? Kind of thing. But if you can look at your locks and everything else, that's where you get into that deterrence. I have a trailer out in my driveway here, a utility trailer. And at my old house, when I was living in Georgia, between myself and a roommate I had, we had 3 trailers stolen out of our driveway. So now, like with my trailer here, I got a hitch lock on it. Mm-hmm. I have a padlock on it. I have two of the wheel chocks. I have a cable around the wheel. So if somebody looks at it, it's like, oh, it's going to take me a while to steal this trailer. And hopefully that deters someone from messing around my driveway very long. But I think that your course can benefit people in that way, just a better way to look at their homes. I like that. I think it sounds like it really helps people focus on their home security, or maybe not even just focus on their home security, better understand their home security. The 5 Ds of home security starts with, you have to outline your perimeter. Where's my perimeter? And then you look at everything from there in, and how do you make, with deter, detect, delay, deny, and defend kind of stuff, right? So, how do you look at that? And I don't think people really, I think people play a lot of lip service to that, just kind of like, I know my perimeter and this is what it is. And then it gets back to the rifle. I'll defend, right? Kind of thing. But if you can look at your locks and everything else, that's where you get into that deterrence. I have a trailer out in my driveway here, a utility trailer. And at my old house, when I was living in Georgia, between myself and a roommate I had, we had 3 trailers stolen out of our driveway. So now, like with my trailer here, I got a hitch lock on it.
Mhm.
You know, I have a padlock on it. I have two of the wheel chocks. I have a cable around the wheel. So if somebody looks at it, it's like, oh, it's going to take me a while to steal this trailer. And hopefully that deters someone from messing around my driveway very long. But I think that your course can benefit people in that way, just a better way to look at their homes. Speaking of locks, what if someone wants to, like, say, secure their doors, right? You know, because that's obviously a big entryway into the house. What are some good door locks to look at that aren't and setups that can really help withstand, you know, a fair amount of force for someone trying to get in there?
Sure. That is the first question I get from a lot of people after I show them how to pick a lock open. They go, "Oh, I picked it open." And then they go, "I have to change my locks on my door." And while in a vacuum, they're not wrong, there is just an incredible, overwhelming mountain of evidence that no, you don't have to change your locks. You can breathe. Much more beneficial to do things like frame hardening. So it's called your latch strike plate. It's a little square thing with the rounded edge that when you shut the door, the latch hits it and then tucks in and then goes into that hole. It's a little plate that they drill in. Those are usually installed with 1/2-inch screws, maybe 1-inch screw at best. Take those out, plug a 3-inch screw in, and you're instantly way more protected from things like a forced entry on your door. So changing the screws in that strike plate will give you a much better return on investment for security. And that's because what do you think is more likely? Someone that's going to pick your lock open or someone that's going to kick your door in or pry your door out? And the data shows overwhelmingly that things like a forced entry is way more likely than someone picking your lock. Lock picking is a growing skill set and a growing art form. It's certainly expanded over the last 2 decades. I've been heavily involved in it. But the FBI data, if you look up the publicly available with the burglary statistics, I think it's more than 99% of all burglaries were void of lockpicking. It was either breaking something to get in or going in through an open door or window or having the key somehow. Just and that's for a lot of people don't know this, but I don't want to say most, a lot of burglaries happen from people that already have access. So it depends on what you're trying to defend against. And that's really important. I did a whole hour-long podcast on that recently. I think title is something like threat assessment or knowing your attacker or something like that. But the point is, if you want to stop a couple hoodlum kids from breaking into your house, just lock the doors and windows. Okay. If you want to stop a home invasion where someone's going to force entry in, upgrade the hardware around your door and your frame. You don't even need to change the locks. Just make it harder to kick in and put some window film on your windows so they're harder to break with a brick. Problem solved. If you're worrying about Jason Bourne, assassinating you in the middle of your sleep, probably nothing you can do about that. So just live your life. So it depends on what you want to prevent against. And I always recommend that they do target hardening before they worry about their locked and keyed systems.
Yeah. Have you ever messed around with door armor? It goes on the...
Yeah.
Goes up the door jam side?
I recommend that 100%.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
No, I like that. I think that's important. Did you ever watch the show To Catch a Thief back in the day? Probably 20 years ago
maybe
now.
Seen an episode or two. Yeah.
50. It was 2 guys that like they're professional burglars and they both done time in prison for it. And that's how how they were found. And they, people asked them, well, you got caught. And they're like, yeah, but I robbed thousands of homes. And I think that what they said was that it was, people not locking their front doors and then unlocked windows.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know they recommended putting your exterior doors on, self-closing hinges and having a a touchpad combination lock of some sort. So that way, when you go out, it always closes. Doesn't matter if you have your keys with you, and that way, human laziness doesn't figure into the equation. If you want to look at a good brand of door locks, is there a brand out there that's better?
So you're going to spend quite a bit of money, but the ASSA Abloy, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I think it's a foreign company. I'm pretty sure it is. They have a key that's not shaped like a normal house key. The problem is a locksmith is not going to pick that thing open. Probably 90% chance the locksmith is going to have to either destroy the lock or find a different way in. They're great if you don't want someone picking your lock. And the interesting thing about that is anything that's 1 degree off from standard common practice lockpicking is a security step in a positive direction for security by obscurity, even if it's not a very strong system, even if it's easy to pick, because most lockpicking is taught on pin tumbler locks. That's the kind of house key where you've had since you were a kid. It's got the flat, smooth bottom on the key blade and the little ridges on top. And there's maybe 3 or 4 brands out there over the last 20, 30 years. Kind of the big 3, big 4. Those are all pickable with something just the size of 2 little tools the size of a paperclip. There's a 90% chance that if I were to walk up to your front door right now, I could be in within, on a good day, 60 seconds, on a bad day, 6-7 minutes. Very high percentage chance. But if you own a locking system that doesn't look like that normal key, then I have to go, ooh, I hope I have the tool for that. So I'm a very experienced entry expert. And if on the chance that you have something different than the normal, even if it's easy for me to open, I have to go, I don't have the tool. And I either have to try to makeshift something to work or try again later, go home.
Right.
So security by obscurity is an interesting concept. But the way that most people in the mainstream use it is, I went to a bar maybe a year or 2 ago, and a couple sat down next to me and they were like, oh, what do you do? And I said, well, I teach emergency entry, how to unlock locks. They went, you teach criminals, how dare you? I went, God, yeah, just like martial arts academies teach bullies, and just like gun ranges teach murderers. Yeah, I know. So it's a spoon. It can make you fat, it can make you healthy. It's up to you how you use it. So most of the people, they think that if no one speaks about the flaw in this system, then we're safe. Yeah. And that's a terrible way to live your life. That's like, I heard the metaphor, that's like running through the woods with a blindfold on because you're less likely to hit a tree because you can't see them.
Right.
Well, no, there is a flaw in your system. The best thing you can do is understand the flaw in your system and adjust accordingly, or not, but at least to be aware of it. So yeah, that's a weird side rant. I've been in this game for a long time. There's lots of weird ins and outs. I've published 5 books so far on the topic. We have a couple more coming out this year of non-destructive entry and lockpicking.
Right.
And I think one of them might just be kind of behind the scenes. I think that'd be interesting. Just the stuff that people don't, even practitioners of the sport and the skill set, things that aren't public knowledge, I think would be interesting to kind of write about.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. That's all really interesting. I think we've covered a lot of good ground here today, man. Go ahead and get ready to wrap this up. But before we do, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, all the good stuff that, getting some people coming in and learning how to do some homestead lockpicking and stuff.
Cool. Thank you very much. Almost everything can be found on our website, but we're currently going through an overhaul. So it should be finished in about 30 days. I switched one domain to another and it got locked up, but utac.io. That's Uniform Tango Alpha Charlie, utac.indiaocean.io. That is the easiest way to get to our gear store. We have our tools for sale. We have our books for sale there. We have our in-person courses you can sign up for there. You can also find a link to our online training videos. That's the easiest way to find me. My email is my name, Pat, and that's at utac.io. I check that every single day. I don't always get back to people in a timely manner. I'm a one-person machine running everything. But if it's important, shoot me a reminder. That will not upset me. And we live in a beautiful, secluded, rural training compound here in the middle of central Georgia. And we have multiple structures, multiple buildings. We have commercial, we have residential locks to play with. We have a classroom, we have a garage, we have privacy, so people from the public aren't bothering us.
What part of Georgia are you in?
We're about 40 minutes south of Macon.
Oh, okay.
We're very much in the center of the state.
Yeah,
and
I know right where you're at.
We have about a course per month out here this year that we're hosting. And we have a commercial kitchen on site. We have a bunk room with 8 full-size beds. We got showers, toilets for our students. We love having people come out here. And I think the nice thing about the training courses here is most of them that I've gone to in my life, I've attended lots of rifle courses, entry courses, medical, spies, all sorts of stuff. And usually you get your hotel room, you go to the hotel room at night, you wake up, you hope you find the right facility. You get there, you spend 8 hours with your instructor, you go home and you're like, I have more questions. And you sit there in your hotel room by yourself and you repeat it maybe the next day. Here, we can stretch that a lot. So we wake up and you're already here. If you show up the night before for the meet and greet, we have a drink or two, sit by the fire, have a snack. And then training starts at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. And we all look at each other around noonish and we go, who's hungry? Okay, how about this? I'm going to start walking to our kitchen, which is right there, and we'll start cooking. And if you want to take a nap for a few minutes and then come eat in the bunk room, do that. If you want to hang out with us in the kitchen while we cook and, kind of shoot the crap and just talk, let's do that. If you want to take a nap after lunch, do that, because we don't have to end at 5 o'clock sharp. We can end early. We can end late. We can teach a lesson later tonight. And so it just allows us the kind of flexibility to be a little more human out here. Yeah. We don't have to rush to beat traffic. We don't have to leave for lunch. We can cook on site, which we do often. So kind of the biggest thing is if you have a super big interest in diving really deep into this skill set, the best way to do it is to come spend a day or two out here at our compound with us.
Oh, man, next time I'm down in Georgia, I might have to do that. I spend a lot of time around Americas there. Columbus and Americas.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, hey, dude, thanks for coming on the show, Pat. Man, I had a really good time.
Fantastic. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time.